Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you for joining the research journey. My name is Charles Bijimi, the host of the research journey. I'm joined with I'm joined by these lovely and exciting gentlemen who have made impact in their research journey, and they are happy to be part of this episode. So I want to welcome them. So I'm excited to introduce my guests to this session, a session that discusses the experience of researchers in the areas of expertise, what makes them tick, what challenges them, what helps them, and what makes the research a place of interest. I encourage our listeners to pay keen attention to these gentlemen as we present them in this session. Joining me is Dr. Ezra Vivan, a senior lecturer in the Department of Environmental Management at Kaduna University. His research sits in the intersection between water resource management, environmental planning, and urban sustainability. His work has, real implications for communities navigating resource scarcity and environmental change. His research spans the issues of groundwater quality assessment, water, wastewater treatment systems, and environmental impacts in industrial activity. He has published extensively and has done so much, ranging from public health effect on refinery effluent discharge to the potential of rainwater harvesting in water-stressed regions. He has done so much work and recently working on machine learning to evaluate groundwater quality and modeling pollutant removal in constructed wetlands. He is a unique researcher, and his perspective has been shaped over the years by his studies on environmental management, which intersects with policy, planning, and public health. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ezra.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm also joined with Dr. Usman Makarfi, who is also a BIM design lead in his organization and a researcher based in Salford, and has extensive research experience, particularly in building information modeling and its adoption in particularly with small and medium-sized architectural firms. His work bridges digital technology, information management, and construction practice. He has explored ideas around the use of innovative tools to succeed, or to make changes in the organizational context related to construction management. He has developed digital prototype frameworks to better understand the drivers and barriers of technology adoption in the construction sector, particularly with attention to SME firms. And his unique research has made impact to address certain challenges. Usman's research has contributed to the understanding of how human capital development, organizational culture, and technical infrastructure has shaped the success of the transformation to digital technology. And he is an exciting individual to have in this session. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Makarfi.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I am really excited to have this wonderful gentleman in this session, and I look forward to having a decent conversation. I'd like to start with Dr. Ezra. The question is about, before we go in, because we want to go into a discussion about ideas about literature map, because the title of this session is the literature map. What makes it tick, what makes it relevant. So before we go into that depth of the issues around literature, I just want to ask this question. I think I will throw it also to Usman later when you're done. Like, what drew your attention to this area, the area you have, you're working on? What was the thing that, that drew you to start working in the particular area that you are at the moment?
Thank you for having me once again. I particularly work on water resource development and management while integrating environmental sustainability and all that, and urban planning. What really struck my attention is that first and foremost, water is one of the major problems we have because the way water is, it is not evenly distributed. You have areas with water surplus and you have areas with water deficit. And I put it to you that the issues that are related to water are so numerous that one, most deaths on earth from water-related diseases. If we are not able to strike a balance between water deficit and water surplus area, we're going to have very serious issues. And also, this is tied to the Sustainable Development Goals, which in one of the goals is Goal 6. And Goal 6 is focused on water supply and sanitation. These are the key issues that relates to public health and issues of mortality and fatality. A lot of people, particularly in Africa and other developing countries of the world, where you have very serious issues with water scarcity and water pollution. So there are issues. These issues lead to serious fatality and serious socioeconomic loss. Because like in Africa, for instance, people spend so much time to look for water, particularly women and children in search of water. They travel long distances to look for water. So there are a lot of factors that have really struck me and drew my attention to the fact that there is a need for us to strike a balance between these water surplus areas and water deficit areas. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. I understand. I mean, water. I say water everywhere. There's no water to drink. Yeah, so it's really an issue, of course, and also relates to what structures are put in place to make sure that those water everywhere is actually getting to the people. I'd like to hear your own view, Dr. Makarfi, in terms of what drew you to the area of your research and what you're doing at this moment.
I think what captured my attention, or let's say what assisted me in making my decision to go through this route, is experience and a lot of knowledge along the way. So I started my journey years ago where I did my MSc. Initially, I applied for construction project management since I was an architect, so thinking that if I manage projects, it will be okay. But deep down, I have this feeling and understanding on how electronics and digital technology works. I never thought that you can merge the digital technology and the architectural design and construction that I have. Now, along the way, I found out that there's a course called Digital Architectural Design, and that was the first time that I was exposed into the world of BIM. And BIM is building information modeling, and it's just a process of creating and managing information across throughout the project lifecycle and even beyond. So now that sparked my interest. I did that during my MSc, and I decided to pursue my PhD, and I decided to do something about it. In my MSc, I understood that a lot of the developing economy have an understanding what BIM is, but they do know it theoretically. They don't know how to put it in practice where they are. Now, BIM has fast become the standard, is the global standard. Construction has always been stagnant. There isn't much improvement like the automotive industry, like other agriculture and the rest. Construction has always been there. It's one of the oldest field that we know. People need shelter, and the way to develop that shelter needs to be managed efficiently. Now the population have boomed, and then we need to match up the pace in which the world is getting populated to us developing the shelters that we need. So take, for example, Nigeria. Most of the people I interviewed during my MSc, do you know what BIM is, but they don't actually know what it entails. If you ask them what it is, they give a vague description of using digital tools and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, in developed countries where the economy is already booming, they've already made it a standard, a government mandate that you don't produce any design without making it a BIM compliant project. So I decided to do a research where I will kind of bridge that gap and create an understanding for the developing economy that this is what BIM is, and this is how you should understand it, and this is how you should put it in practice. If we look at the major companies like Autodesk and the rest, they focused on large industries, large firms. I decided to focus on the small and medium firms, which they're majority of the firms that we have, even in developing countries. 80% of companies are either small or medium. They do have finite resource. They need to know how to allocate that resource, and they need to have an understanding. They don't have money to start doing research or putting training or buying equipment. They need to fully understand why they are spending their money. And that's what my research is. I used digital prototype to develop a framework for understanding BIM adoption within small and medium architectural firms. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for this introduction. I mean, it's exciting to get to understand how you guys transition to where you are at the moment. And I understand in all this conversation, literature has played a very important role in all that, because I mean, you would have to read before you get this information. So it takes a lot of a great part of the journey of doing whatever you have decided to do, because some of the information you have received or you have gained were influenced by the kind of literature that you came across. So I like to ask this question, like, what was it like, the thing, or when did you realize that this literature would become a part of your research challenge? You know, how you want to go about it, how you want to look for it, how you want to embed it into your own research. I'll start with you, Dr. Makarfi.
So thank you for this question. I think if you will permit me, let me reframe the question so that it will be clearer to the audience. Let's look at a typical research journey for a PhD student. So I will give example with my own journey, how I started and how I conducted the part of the literature. So usually it's typically 3 years or 4 years in the university that I attended. And you have to give some kind of proposal so that the supervisor will know this is the research area that you want. He will see the way you write, and he will see that these are the type of relevant literatures that you've kind of identified before you even start. So you have a rough idea. That idea might not be what you're going to continue with. It might change completely based on the information that you gather. But for the first 6 months, I was reading articles, trying to find research gap, because that's the first thing that they put you through to do, read. But sometimes the more you read, the more you get confused. So it took me about 6 months. I will read, I will think that I found my research gap, but then I'll find out that someone else have already done that, and then I'll move to the next, and so on and so forth. But I do understand that there's a technique to identifying research gap or knowing the literature that you need to add to your research. So it all boils down to your research question. What do you want to solve? What is the problem? What's the issue? So if you know your issue, you can break it down into different parts. So for example, taking my own topic, I didn't know that I'm going to develop a framework for understanding BIM. I just knew that I want to do something related to BIM. I want to do something related to architecture, something related to construction industry. And that is where I focused my literature. So I start with previous theses that were done in that area and checked how did they conduct their research, what were the key themes and what were the key research that they were looking at. I looked at publications. I looked at review articles, which is very good because if you look at a review article, the author have already gone through a lot of literature and fixed that. So that's what I did. Each literature, I created a table. This is what the guy did. This is the gap, and this is the solution. And these are probably the literature that you come across. So the more you read, the more you kind of see a pattern that certain type of literature within your field has been referenced a lot, and then the credibility as well. So because I did my MSc in related field, it wasn't that difficult for me to kind of know, yeah, this is credible, this is not credible, and so on and so forth. So once I got that, I already know that out of, let's say, 108 systematic literature review that I did, this is the gap. And these are the people that have done something similar to mine in a different context and so on and so forth. And with that, you can easily distill which information you're going to keep and which information you're not going to keep. So that's how I went about my own process.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I'd like to also ask Dr. Ezra about, how you feel about this, when you were going into it. Was it like, like a challenge? How did you see it?
For me, it was really challenging because I was transiting from urban planning to hydrogeology. And I remember when I raised the issue with my supervisor, he asked me if I had a background in geology. I told him no, because urban planning is more of human geography than physical geography. And hydrogeology is more of physical. It has to do with processes of the earth crust and the relationship with water, its flow, its hydrochemistry, and all that. And he was wondering how I was going to do that. And at some point, he was telling me, I hope you won't get stuck. But to the glory of God and with the help of reading, I read a lot of literature. And my study was on groundwater condition. And we were looking at groundwater from two major perspectives, groundwater yield and groundwater quality. And for you to be able to determine the yield, because these are factors that are normally affected, these conditions are affected by the geology, where the geology of that area that is underlain. Because the yield of groundwater is determined by geology, and also the quality is also determined by the geology. And someone not having a background in geology should know what that means. I read a lot of literature that relates to geology. I had to read a lot of literature too that relates to hydrogeochemical processes of groundwater. And it was not funny because what I was looking for limitations. I was looking for limitations in previous literatures. I was looking for methodologies. I tried to explore. Then finally, I was looking at unexplored areas, and which, anyway, with time, I'm going to explain that. But basically, my idea was I was looking at for two things: limitations in previous works, and basically the methods applied by previous researchers. So I read a lot of works. I had to basically go back to give myself the basic knowledge of geology again from the scratch, coming from a completely different background. So I remember when I was on my Viva, my external examiner had to ask me again, how were you able to achieve all this with your background? So what really helped me out, to be very honest and frank, is literature. I dwelled on literature. I practically would sleep and wake up with literature. So I had to read very, very fast, to be honest. And that really helped me in carrying out my research. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think you've mentioned something very important. So while you were doing your literature, you were not just looking at the gap, you were looking at methodology as well.
Yes, yeah.
And I think this is something that people should be aware of. If your research is not aligned to your experience and your background, then your literature review will be a bit more challenging than others that have aligned.
It was challenging.
Yeah, because I think based on my own experience, as I mentioned, it's the same field that I did. So when I came back, it was like a walk in the park. I already knew exactly what to check and then check if there's anything that is updated in the field and stuff. And because I know what's in practice back in the based on what I did in my MSc, I already know that this is how the professionals think and so on and so forth. So it's just for me to confirm most of what I'm saying or find relevant literature. That's very interesting to hear.
Yeah, it was quite challenging, but it has really broadened my knowledge and perspective, honestly.
I have another question. While reading literature, are there other areas that you think that you might have jumped into, or did you get like distracted? Oh, this area is interesting and so on and so forth.
Well, I think from the inception, like I told you, what attracted me into that is the issue of water scarcity, public health issue, and all that. And I got attracted. In fact, I was so determined. Let me use the word determined. I was so determined because my supervisor tried discouraging me, knowing fully well I don't have a background, but I stood firm. I stood firm and I told him that this is what I wanted to do. And by the grace of God, I was able to achieve what I wanted because I stood firm. I had to consult a lot of literature. I had to interact with a lot of sociologists, those in the field, or those in practice, and all that. And I learned so much as it relates to geology. But basically, most of my knowledge came from literature reviewed. I read a lot of books written by different authors, a lot of journals, a lot of articles, reviews, and what have you. So that really shaped and broadened my perspective. I was able to understand the basic concepts that relates to the geological processes of groundwater.
Yeah, I think I just want to say something here. You mentioned something about reading, and then compare your experience and with your MSc and PhD experience. That if it makes sense.
Well, things are evolving now over time. Things are changing. One thing that is constant about research is change. We cannot continue having the same mindset when it comes to literature review and all that. You can even from the point of that research itself has evolved over time. There are a lot of new things coming up as it relates to research. So you just have to accept the realities as time goes on. I can put it to you now. When you go back to read your BSc work, you will see that you didn't do. In fact, you just laugh it off. You keep on laughing because of the level at which you are and what was obtainable then. But now with a lot of things, new ideas that have evolved, you now have the application of AI into research, machine learning, science, and what have you. So you cannot compare what was obtainable back then and now. So when during our undergraduate days, it was reading. In fact, you weren't having access to internet. It was hard copies. We go to the library, spend the whole day. In fact, you'll be covered by books. You go up to the extent of reading books like Botanical and Americana encyclopedias. And you understand? So you find out that then students that were doing research were always in the library reading hard copies. But there was nothing like these open access journals. We weren't having them then because what the university used to do then was to order. They order for these books, hard copies, and before they even come, sometimes the data there is already obsolete because they come from developed countries to Africa, and the shipment and all that, it takes a longer time. But now with the access, with the internet and with the development in science, literature review, a lot of things have evolved. So you really have to laugh it off if you're going to compare what was obtainable back then and what we have to achieve now. And I can assure you that in the next few years, if you're going to continue to be in this business of it, as we are going to be, you'll still discover that what we did some years back would be a little bit obsolete now.
Yeah.
New ideas are coming in.
I think the experience, or let's say the perception that we had is the access. First of all, you have to go to library. There's this physical copy and the rest. And then during our time, we have access to internet. So there are some level of soft copy. And in fact, majority of my listing was soft copy. I barely touched hard copy, only a few methodology books that I went to the library and pick up. In the coming generation, I think even the soft copy, people might not open the soft copy. They might look for, let's say, try to extract the knowledge without actually reading it and extracting it with their brain. So what I'm thinking here is probably our predecessors think, why would you use Google and search this? You're not going to do the hard work. You didn't have the knowledge in your brain, this and that and this. And you think, oh, that's old school, we finished that. Do you think that's the same situation that we're in, whereby people come in the next generation and be like, you have to search for something to like kind of find the book, go through it, read it and get it? Do you think we will be right to say, but you wouldn't have the knowledge if you just go through those tools without actually reading and understanding with your brain? Are we turning like our predecessors, or what do you think about that?
Well,
is it I know I can't say it's a good thing or a bad thing. Every tool have the benefits, and most of the times benefits outweigh the disadvantage.
A coin has two sides. You have the good, the positive, and the negative, the merit and demerit. Well, I think it's with the advent of technology and what is obtainable now, it makes research seamless and easy, almost effortless. But the major thing is that whatever is made available to you, you still need to read to understand.
Yeah.
Because it is only when you understand, because at some point you are expected to develop a conceptual framework.
Yeah.
And sometimes you could have a theory or a theoretical framework that underpins your research. And from that theory, you want to probably develop a model or a concept. You cannot develop a concept or a model when you don't think and when you don't read. It's until when you have read and you have the background, it's upon that background you can now build whatever concept you want to build. So concept models, approaches, they don't fall from the sky. They are developed from other people's ideas. But you cannot develop another person's idea when you don't truly understand what that idea is talking about. So there is the need for us to still, even if technology makes this thing readily available to us. Yes, but there is not just reading, but really understanding. Because at the end of that research, you are expected to come up with deliverables. And what are they? You cannot deliver, you cannot give what you don't have. You really have to understand that concept before you can give out anything.
I totally agree with you. You know, the reading part is equally important. You know, I was having a chat with my boys earlier this morning about having the variety of perspective about certain things, because when you read, you have, an open-minded approach into addressing certain issues. But once you just restrict yourself to just, one source or just the tool, it might be a problem. So of course, just like you said about, a coin having two sides, of course, you have merits and demerits, but it's important to actually read. And I think from the last explanation you made about, your literature research, literature review experience, I think what I wanted to even say at that time was reading is equally important and in all that journey of doing your literature review. So I want to go ahead to ask the next question. I'm really going to start with Dr. Ezra. I'm just curious about your first moves, about how you decide where to start reading, and was there a strategy, or is just about clicking around or something to get to what you did in your literature review?
Well, before we get to literature, there was the background. There was the background, which is the introduction stage. which we had agreed with my supervisor. It was carrying my research questions and objectives. So that had streamlined, that had given us a direction. So there was no point running around and randomly reading. It's of no use. It's like a wild goose chase. Already, whatever you are doing is meant to answer your research questions and tailored to your objectives. So you don't already know what we're looking out for. We're looking out for groundwater yield and groundwater quality. So you just go straight into that. But then remember I told you that my background, I was transiting from urban planning to geology. It meant I really had to go back and really understand the concept, the hydrogeological processes that involves water movement, water flow, and groundwater flow, and all that. So until that is understood, I cannot be able to determine groundwater yield or determine groundwater quality. So I had to first and foremost go back to really understand the hydrogeochemical processes of groundwater. Then upon that, I was able to now tailor or streamline myself to literatures that are related to groundwater yield and groundwater quality. So there were so many literature, but sometimes you need to also limit yourself. You need to be very careful not to kill yourself reading too many literatures. Once you start reading and it's not giving you what you want, please discard immediately and move on to the next. By so doing, you are now sieving. It's a sieving process to reduce time and to help you in time management, because you also have a timeline to meet. So reading too many literature may not give you what you want, but reading literatures that are tailored to your objectives and are basically trying to help answer your research questions is what you should focus on. And I think that is what really helped me, with the help of under the guidance of my supervisor, who is also an expert in this area. We didn't have a serious problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
I think let me add to that. I find out that for you to know what you want to do, I think you already have your research question, as he mentioned, but you have idea of the research area that you want to check. So once you start searching for articles that are related to that, I think the fastest way to know whether that article is for you or not is by reading the abstract. From the abstract, you will know whether the methodology is going to suit what you want. You will know whether the research area is in line with what you want. If you cannot pick an information from the abstract to fit in one of your section, either background, either methodology, either some conceptual framework or theoretical framework or some kind of philosophical something that you want to answer within your research, then you discard that. But if in an abstract you see that, oh, this person said he talked about this area and it will fit in my methodology section, then you can keep that aside and just say, okay, this article, methodology section. Maybe the next article, you go straight to his literature review and the next article. So as he mentioned earlier, sieving is very important. You don't have time. You have very limited amount of time. And if you read too much, you get confused, in my own case. So you have to make sure that what you're reading is relevant to what you're trying to achieve. And then the quality is also important. Q1, Q2 journals before you go into other types of journals. If not, you'll end up getting information that you strongly believe it's relevant, but it has no basis.
Yeah,
so that's
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, carry on.
Yeah, so I mean, I really appreciate that. Something I just needed to ask. Sometimes I remember in my conversation with one of my, research mentor, who mentioned something about, keeping records. And I think Dr. Makarfi slightly mentioned something like that about, whatever you're reading, you have to, because sometimes people just read and don't keep record of those literature that they've read. And then you get to a point where you want to refer back and you get confused. And I remember I came across a template where some people have designed in such a way that you keep record of, like, you have rows and columns where you have the title, the author, issue that was researched, the findings, the methodology used, something like that that will make it a bit easier for you to keep records. Because sometimes you would make, for particular research, you find that when you go in there, you like some of the things you read may not be relevant, but you have documented something that will be relevant to another research. And of course, I'm sure it's something that, from what you've said, is something that you guys have come across and have done to make your research as thick as it is. I just want to go ahead and ask, another question about, something while you're doing your research. There might be, or there may be, a paper that, help to change your mindset or to propel you into certain action that, made your research as thick as it was, and then you were confident. Just, I don't know, maybe once you're going through, did you by any chance came across anything of worthy of mention in terms of the literature you read that you think was significant in your research journey?
Well, yeah, there is no way, nothing is a waste when it comes to research. Let me start with that. Normally, when you are reading literature, there are literatures that are captivating. Let me use that word, captivating. You stay glued because you begin to marvel at how such things are done and how the person is able, particularly when you are looking for methodological gaps. And there are certain methodologies you will see that will keep you captivated. And you really, because it is almost answering your work. It's almost answering the research questions you have. But it's just that you're trying to understand what the person has done so that you will be able to build on it, because you cannot even adopt someone's methodology. You can adopt, but maybe modify it so that it won't look as if you had copied someone's work. But most times, there is no way you will you go through literatures and not find one, at least one, that is captivating. Captivating here means you'll be held down for time, because you keep going back to that literature, because it's almost giving you a gateway to the end of your research. So I know in my case, I had one or two cases where I got captivated by certain literatures. And I kept citing them most times, even when it got to the point of discussing my results. I kept going back I kept referring to those literature. So you find out that there are literatures that you really get captivated with too. And towards the end of your work, or particularly when you're discussing your results, you keep mentioning them, you keep going back to them, because they have been able to provide an insight into what you need to complete your research successfully.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I understand that Dr. Makarfi would want to leave. If you want to say something before you leave, so.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Okay. All right. So it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and your contribution to the session. I look forward to having you in another session. Thank you very much. I'm still here with Dr. Ezra, who will continue with the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So, yeah. So I'm still with Dr. Ezra now, and we're talking about the literature review. The literature map, is an important aspect of a researcher's journey, which is informative, which is also like a searchlight for a researcher. And I like to ask this, question to, like in every field, there are, more like a school of thoughts, there are, ideas about, what makes it thick. In your own research, there you may have, come across some of these things. And of course, I know you were transitioning from urban planning into that, water, which is hydrogeology and the rest of them, it was quite challenging. So as you went into, I know that you had your own school of thoughts about what you did in urban planning, but like looking at going through hydrogeology, and then related to water and, resource management and stuff like that, what were the main, schools of thoughts that directed your research, where areas of agreement, disagreement that, powered your research journey in that new area of interest?
Well, the challenges, the ideas I had on after reading my literature, after consulting literatures, there are different school of thoughts when it comes to what do you call it? When it comes to hydrogeological processes of groundwater. There are different school of thoughts. There are schools that look at just groundwater flow. There are schools that just look at hydrochemical processes of groundwater. There are people that are just interested in water quality. But all these things put together, they are not different. But what I am saying is that there are certain models. Like the model I use was developed by Todd. And Todd's model is simply talking about the hydrogeochemical processes of groundwater. And that was what I was trying to look at. And because what I actually did was I went through a lot of models and a lot of school of thought and ideas. What I looked out for was their strengths and weaknesses as it relates to my work. And I had to evaluate. I did a serious evaluation. I evaluated each of these. And from my evaluation, I discovered that the thought theory model had more strengths than weaknesses as it relates to my work. There's no school of thought that is totally a waste. It depends. It depends on its application and the area. You understand? So basically what you are going to look at is the strengths and weaknesses of those theories, those models, those concepts, those approaches. Now, what are just like a critique, you're going to have a very serious critique of those theories, models, concepts, approaches. Now, after you've done a thorough critique of those approaches in relation to your work, in relation to what you want to achieve. Now, the theories or the concepts which strengths outweighs, not just outweighing now, but align to what you want to achieve is what you will adopt. So normally, I belong to that school of thought now because this was what I was working on. This was the area I was working on, and it aligns. Apart from its strength, it truly aligns to what I was trying to do. And I developed on it because it was from that theory I now developed the concept. I was able to develop my own conceptual framework from that theoretical framework, which underpinned the study I took. So basically, what happens here is that there is no school of thought that is stronger than any. It is left for the researcher. Now, it is dependent on the researcher. You can draw your strength. You can draw your strength in literature review whenever you are able to evaluate. Evaluating here means you critique these models or theories or concepts or approaches and see which one best fits your work, which ones best underpins your work. If not, you may end up having a very serious problem. So once you get this theory, you can modify them if you can. Because basically you need to understand what they are and what the components are. From there, you can be able to do whatever you want to do, but basically you have to have a basic knowledge of what the concept or model or approach or theory is all about.
Yeah, I think it makes
how it relates to your work So
yeah.
your acceptability of any concept or school of thought or theory first lies with what you want to achieve. You are the architect of your work. So if the work does not fit into your research, then you can discard it. It's of no use.
Yeah.
But basically, you have to evaluate. You don't have to just read one concept or one school of thought and just agree with it. It's the case of the issue of half empty, half full. It's the same thing one is saying, but we're looking at it from different directions.
Yeah.
Once we have 9 or 6 written, the person standing on this end will say it's 6. The person on the other end will say it's 9. But actually, it may be solving the same problem, but still, you need to look at how the strength of those, the merits of those theory, and how they best fit your study or research.
Yeah, that makes sense actually, because something that attracted me from from this explanation is about the conceptual framework. Most times researchers struggle with the idea of conceptual framework, and sometimes they find it a bit distressing somehow to convey that in their research. Like, if you are to advise someone who is going into research, maybe either a early career researcher or someone who is just starting a PhD, or so, what would you advise in terms of the strategy, the approaches, and the end game?
Well, it has first it has to do with interest. Honestly, anybody that is into any research that he doesn't have interest in has failed from the beginning. You must have interest in whatever you want to do. Like I said earlier, when I started my journey and I ventured into water, I remember my supervisor discouraging me because he said, "You are going to get stuck midway." And I told him, I have passion for this thing. So first, you must have passion and believe in yourself, because once you have passion for it, you will definitely see that research through. You understand? Now, your interest now will determine whatever theory or whatever concept you're going to come up with. Because I know at some point when I was going through this thing, he had to give me a lot of literature where for me to understand the difference between theories and concepts and how concepts are being developed. You understand? So, but first, for anybody that is venturing to any research, first it has to do with interest, because you cannot complete any research when you are not interested in it. You must be attracted to it. Something must have triggered your interest. So now you are inquisitive. You are so passionate. You want to know. You want to find out. So once you have that, then you outline. Because the beginning of every research, the truth of the matter, the beginning of every research is literature. Because before I even picked my topic, I had to consult. Though I had interest, I had already consulted literatures previously to help me even write my proposal. So as it stands, first is the person's interest and how grounded he is in that subject area. Though I was not grounded in mine, but now I'm grounded because I had to consult literature continuously and had developed myself. So my advice is that nothing is impossible in research. Nothing is impossible. The first thing is interest. If you are interested in what you want to do, you definitely want to see the end of it. It's just a simple concept, just like the law of gravity that was developed by the physicist. Yeah, it was just a simple question he asked. Why do things fall to the ground? He wanted to know, why do they, not up, not the other way around. So it's the same thing. Something must have triggered your interest, and you are so passionate about it. So you will do everything you can to see it through. You really want to find out what is going on. You really want to satisfy your curiosity. So in so doing, you need to consult literature. In fact, literature review is the beginning of every research. Let me be very honest with you. Because even the background you're writing, even the research problem you're writing still stems from literature that you have consulted. It's not just coming from the vacuum. So every researcher really needs to review literature, and in the process, know which literature best fits his or her study. You need to do a critique, you need to evaluate these literatures and streamline them. Then stick to the ones that will really guide you in coming up with a viable research. Another thing I need to add is that people need to understand, because it's not every researcher that understands. Some people don't even know how to interpret models or theories. If they see a framework, they get confused. So people need to take time to really read and understand, because these are human minds. They're not coming from, it's not rocket science. Someone developed it. All you need to do is take your time, be patient, study it honestly, you understand it. And from there, you'll be able to develop your own concept from that person's idea. So that's what I have to say concerning that.
Yeah, like, I mean, it makes sense because you mentioned something about interests.
Yes.
Is important. You know,
that for me, every other researcher, that's the most important thing. It must be something that has interested you. You've been attracted to that thing by something. If not, you may not be. You just have a lackadaisical attitude to it.
True. And I agree with you 100% because, I mean, if you're not interested, anything can just, I'm fed up, I'll just let go. And of course, your interest will propel you to go further. I just want to,
sorry, sir. The issue of carrying out the research is not just for you to have a breakthrough or anything. Basically, it's contribution to knowledge.
Yeah.
If the person is not interested, do you know that half knowledge is worse than anything? That research is going to mislead a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because his heart and body and soul is not into that research. He just wanted to see it through. At the end, he publishes or releases information that is half true. And you know what that means. That thing becomes, if it eventually gets published, it becomes a reference material. And you can imagine the number of people that will be misled by that half truth. So once you don't have interest, most times you don't end up doing the work. You're not passionate about it, which means we cannot draw any realistic conclusion from your results. No meaningful conclusion can be drawn from the results because you do not have interest. You just decide to do this research for whatever reason, I don't know. Some will just want to have adventure or fun or something. But if you are interested, we want to come up with concrete reasons and concrete results because you truly want to contribute to knowledge.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
Yeah, this question I wanted to ask, is about, sometimes or a lot of times researchers struggle with this issue, like when to decide that you've read enough and you just want to say, I can move ahead now. I've read enough, so it's okay to just conclude. And is there anything like that, or we just have to go on reading? I mean, just yeah.
As a researcher, there's nothing like enough.
Yeah.
Because knowledge does not start and ends with your research. Knowledge has been evolving over time. It is never enough. It is never enough because at the end of your work, someone else will come to look for gaps.
Yeah.
So it is never enough. Just have that at the back of your mind. Whatever you have done, someone will still come to look for gaps. And gaps here, they could be knowledge gap, they could be methodological gaps, they could be empirical gap, they could be whatever gap. But basically, people sometimes look at read literature to identify limitations and contradictions.
Yeah.
So if you have written and you think you have written enough or you have read enough, no. You can only stop when you feel you have gotten what you feel is enough for you to go ahead with your research and make your findings known. But the truth of the matter is that there is no end to research. It's a cycle. It's an unending cycle because no matter how good your results are, no matter how good your conclusions are, no matter how tangible and viable your research is, over time, people will still come to look for gaps. And that looking for gaps, your research now is now a reference material. So it's now another literature for another study.
Yeah, true.
And I'll put it to you that a lot of gaps will be identified. So it is never enough. It is what you have read, it is what you have understood that you plug back into your research. And that is what you eventually let out for people to consume or for people to use. And that is your own contribution to knowledge. But just know that over time, Because we look at, like for us in the environmental sciences, we look at research from two areas, from two perspectives, temporal and spatial. Now, from temporal, I mean over time, someone will come and look at their research and discover a lot of loopholes. So saying that it's enough, I don't think that is the right word. It's never enough. You just do what you have. You just drop what you have for others to read, and if they identify gaps, they will fill the gaps, and life continues. And that is how it's an unending cycle, sir.
Yeah. So thank you. In rounding up, I'm trying to round up now. So I'd like to ask this question, and it's mostly, this question is around your more like your advice or your recommendation to researchers who would want to go into this as a start, or as an enabling kind of a thing. Maybe they are into it, but they need something that will enable them to fast track their process. Like, if you are to give recommendations or any kind of advice for someone who is going into this field, whether it is hydrogeology, whether it is building information modeling, whatever it is, something that will be universal, how do you advise a researcher, so that he wouldn't be taken off guard when he comes into some of the challenges that are around the research journey?
Well, my advice is researchers should first and foremost always want to work on issues that they are interested in. Because once you are not interested in anything, you won't be able to see it through. And if some other persons insist on seeing it through, they may end up giving us half knowledge and half truth. And that is not good for the academic world, because it's actually misleading. So I will always advise researchers to always want to develop interest in whatever they want to do. Once you have interest in it, honestly, you see it through. And you always want to give us the best, because you are interested, because it's like satisfying your curiosity, trying to know why a phenomenon is the way it is. So by so doing, you ask a lot of questions, you try to probe, you do a lot of probing, you do trial and error, you do a lot of things. All you need to do, you do all these things just in the quest of trying to satisfy your curiosity. That is the first thing. There must be interest. There must be interest to researchers, and once you have the interest, the next, consult a lot of literature, because the literature is going methodology data, methodology, previous literature, how things were done, and all that. Then another advice I'll give to researchers is that the level where we are in now, we're more into collaborative research. No man has a monopoly of knowledge. Experts in this field. Even when you read, you need to, like my own case, I had this face-to-face interaction with experts. I followed them to the fields, geologists, hydrogeologists, we shared experiences. And I think sometimes reading is not all about reading. Sometimes sharing experiences with experts in the field will also ease your way of conducting a research. So I so much believe at some point in some research institutions, what they even favor more is collaborative research than you carrying out the research alone. They sometimes feel it is not deep enough. But once you have a collaborative research where you involve experts in the field and experts in related fields, you find out that your information and knowledge is going to be robust. So a lot of people want to carry. You cannot survive as a researcher alone. There's a need for you to go into collaboration, not just consulting literature. Collaboration here means tap ideas, tap information, get people's idea. These are experienced people that are in the field. Then also collaborate with people that have been into research for a while now, because they will serve as your guide, and that will make things easier. But above all, I think first is interest, two, research, literature review, extensive literature review. That's the word now, extensive. First interest, two, extensive, then thirdly, collaboration. And I think you'll be there.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Ezra. I call you Prof. It's really an exciting
Thank you very much
session.
for having me.
And
Thank you very much for having me,
it's
Prof.
really
Yes.
it's really exciting, and I mean, listeners will learn a lot from that, because we talked about the issue of interest in research. We talked also about documenting all through, and most importantly, you have to read.
Yeah,
There is
yeah.
no shortcut. You have to read,
Yes, no, no,
and while you read,
no.
you document the things you read in
Yeah,
terms of identifying the methodology, the key findings, and stuff like that. It helps you to build your argument, and also even around your conceptual framework, that will also be a significant guide in your research. I really want to say a big thank you for coming here. I look forward to having you in more sessions in the future. Thank you so much. Dr. Ezra is a senior lecturer at the university, and also the current head of department. So thank you so much for joining me.
thank you
Viewers,
for
I
having me.
look forward to having you join the next episode. Thank you so much.